Next one, let's go to the SP temperament. So basically they are utilitarian, concrete interests. They are also a really interesting temperament, I have to say. And the first one we have is ISTP. I can go first. I really appreciate how ISTPs are independent. I think ISTPs are the most independent type I know, actually. Like, they literally do things their way. And I admire that, to be honest.
I get that. And the thing that I would say is, I think their like practical genius is unmatched. Maybe they're not flying on some high abstract level, but they actually know how to like get out of any rut. They're sort of like the MacGyver type. I think I wouldn't be surprised if he was an ISTP. There's nothing they can't fix if it's broken. They can play any instrument after they've just fiddled around with it for a little bit. It's the type of person that I would like to group with when the world goes to shit and there's an apocalypse, you know?
Yeah. Totally. And they can also have the soft side, which is actually pretty cool. The extroverted feeling inferiors there, which is like, actually they do also care about people, even though they don't know how to show it though. Okay, the challenges.
The challenge is, I think, like you said, they have this soft side, but I think they sort of struggle with human connection. They might be just, you know, not intentionally mean or rude, but just accidentally, I think they might be slightly insensitive sometimes, or just withdrawn. I don't think they're sort of the Hollywood type, as some other types are.
I think I agree with that, but I also think one of their weaknesses is actually, which is also their strength, the independence, which is that I think they can do things so much their own way that people can misread that. People can take it as disrespect. They don't go around and ask permissions. From 1 to 5, how easy it is to get along?
I think most of the time I get along with ISTPs really, really well. I think I have to give them a 4.
I think for me, it's gonna be a 4 also, I think, because when we do things, it works out.
Yeah, and I think all SP temperaments just sort of let other people live. Like, I think in that sense, they are the most liberal type, you know, because they're not very ideological and they're also not like social polices. They're not like very rigid in how things have to play out. So that's what I love all of those temperaments.
ISFP next.
I can start with this one. I love how free they are. I don't think any type appreciates freedom as much as the ISFP. I think they're exactly the sort of type to like sell everything they own and buy a trailer and drive into the sunset and play guitar on the campfire. And also for that reason, they're very internally motivated. Like, they're very free from these sort of competitions of most other types. I think they're very ambivalent of like money, power, glory sorts of things.
Interesting. I have a different kind of perspective. I definitely think ISFPs care about those glory things. It's kind of contradicting to them. It's kind of like the introverted feeling, extroverted thinking, introverted intuition, and extrovert sensing kind of dynamic there, which is a bit like balancing. I think the strength of ISFP, I agree it's the freedom thing, but I come from a perspective that it's the flexibility. It's that they do what they want. Like, they just do what they want. You can't tell them, don't do that. No, they will do it if they want to. Or like they will feel bad about it or something. You know, it's like, you can't restrict them, really. And you don't want to do that. Why would you want to hurt like a poor ISFP like that? That you take away their freedom. Like, you don't want to do that. So yeah, that's definitely a strength. But I also think it's a big challenge because the ISFP, sometimes I don't know how they can live up to the standard of our society. Like I said with the INFP, I think they also have the weakness that they can become the martyrs of life, which is that the society works like this, that's why I don't need to grow myself or mature myself, or I don't need to because I want my freedom, so no one can tell me what to do and no one can give me restrictions and boundaries. And unfortunately, that's life.
Yeah, it's easy to agree with. That's sort of like the TE in the last spot, like struggling to understand how things actually work, even though it's not pleasant and it doesn't fit their ideological whatever. And I can also see how that plays out in my type. But they struggle with that, and they have FI Dom, so like very strong values and very ideological person. And then I think the SE in the second spot makes them sort of physical and bodily almost. So I think it's easy for them to have this sort of aggression, you know? So I think those traits combined can make this sort of person who goes to rallies and protests and is very like violently for or against something, but then they're gonna have very little or few like practical solutions on how to end the problem that they're protesting against. I think that's a huge struggle that they have.
Yeah, I agree. Literally, because their extroverted intuition is a blind spot. It literally means that they are not thinking of the possibilities or the external ways of the doing things. They do care about abstract topics though. I think the intuitive intuition is a bit childish, they're naive, they like to explore things. But I think definitely ISFP types, both INFPs and ISFPs, can have that kind of not understanding maybe necessarily how the world truly works, but having their own versions of it, but in different ways. Okay, how easy it is to get along?
I'm afraid I don't really know many ISFPs, and I would imagine that I would get along with them pretty well because we share the dominant function. They feel a bit aggressive somehow. I'm not sure I feel comfortable with that. And also I feel like I disagree with them quite often because, well, the ideological component again. And I can't go lower than a 3 though.
I will give a 2. It's almost 1 to be honest, and I just don't have anything in common with them. Okay, we have last 2 types. Let's go into ESTP. What are the strengths?
One strength that the ESTP definitely has is how brave they are. And of course there's also always the question of, is it really bravery if they are not really intimidated in the first place, right? Because I don't think they feel very much of that anyway, but nevertheless, I think they are just very brave, very like initiating, just they will take charge and execute things. Yeah, I would say that they're that sort of like a psychological profile.
And I think ESTP and ENTJs have really similar energy. ESTPs are also directing, energetic types who say things as they are, you know, to the core. So they are also about the doing it. And I think ESTPs hold a lot of potential when it comes to also leadership, because if their introverted intuition balances out the over external sensory thing they're having there, it can be a nice combination. But I think ESTPs are sometimes too focused on the moment and kind of what works now, but not necessarily looking at the bigger picture. Yeah, so what are the challenges? What is the number 1 challenge?
In my personal opinion, it might be different for somebody else who maybe has a different sort of a type, but personally, I feel like they might be just a little intimidating somehow, because I feel like they're sort of on the lower end of empathy for all the types. I feel like they're gonna be sort of not attacking, but something along those lines, and I feel the need to sort of preemptively soothe them when I'm interacting with them, and they can be so direct it's slightly scary in my opinion. And I think in entertainment they're very often portrayed as some sort of bullies. Of course, the majority of ESTPs, I'm sure there are perfectly decent people. I can still kind of see where that bully stereotype comes from.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's definitely their strength, but also a weakness. ESTPs are also pretty independent type, although they are really good in social situations. That's actually also an interesting combination, because they will do what works. They will not do what people say to do. But I think their introverted feeling blind spot can be also a big weakness, that they don't kind of know what are their own values and kind of morals, and that's why they don't know how to navigate that. Everyone tells them what is the right way to do things, and they are really easily going with the flow of people in some sense due to that. Okay, from 1 to 5, how challenging it is to get along with them?
I think I struggle slightly with the type, just because the sort of perceived insensitivity somehow, and they're just very high energy, and I think I often struggle to find that sort of a deeper connection, probably because they don't dwell that much in that abstract sort of sphere. So unfortunately, I think I'm gonna have to give them a 2.
I will give them 1, and it's not because ESTP is not great. I think ESTPs are great, and I admire in many ways ESTPs. To be honest, I like the way the extroverted sensing practicality is combined with the introverted thinking. Like, they have some kind of practical awareness, and they also care about the truth, which I also appreciate a lot. But when it comes to me, I don't think I get along with ESTPs that well, and there is like just the flow isn't natural. ESTPs want to do it their way, I want to do it my way. There's no actually like cooperation there kind of between. Okay, we have last type, ESFPs. Ooh, what do you have to say?
I think I would just say that they are very energetic. In many ways, they are like their SE counterpart, whom we just went over. but they are slightly more likable, I think, because they're a feeling type. So they're going to be very energetic, very likable. They're going to be the life of the party. And I think because they're also very good with people, you can put them in like a workplace setting, or they'll be on a stage, you know, maybe doing some artsy pursuit, and they're just going to be very well liked.
I agree, and actually I think they can come across almost like ESFJs, just because how good they can be with people and the norms and navigating the social atmosphere. I think one of the strengths of ESFPs is definitely when they mature with the intuitive feeling, kind of find who they are and live by their own values and identity. They can be also authentic, performative, explorative types with creativity. It's actually pretty cool if they have that.
And sometimes also, if they're really familiar with their third function, they have this like leadership quality, but they're very likable leaders. So they're not like, you know, these types that are seen as very rigid and stern leaders.
That's actually true, I think. Challenges, I think, for ESFP is going to be how to stay consistent. Why are you doing things for? What is kind of the bigger picture?
Yeah, that requires some level of either consistency, like sort of SI sort of thing, or maybe some depth to the character, which is something that I think they'll gain on a bit later on in life, but it's something that they'll have to work towards. And I think a stereotype that's sometimes true of the ESFPs is that they're slightly superficial, and I think that's something I personally struggle with when it comes to them sometimes.
Yeah, and I think ENFPs and ESFPs both have extra thinking childish function, which is like optimistic naive function, and I think that kind of is a bit sometimes annoying to me, because it's like they can fluctuate so much with their opinions based on what other people say. They don't necessarily even think truth exists in necessarily even. They might talk behind people's back and they might like gossip a lot, which I really don't appreciate. I think that can be a challenge also. From 1 to 5, how challenging?
I usually think I struggle to find the depth with the ESFPs. So even though they are, I would say, more likable because of their feeling trait as opposed to ESTPs, but I can't really go higher than a 2.
I will give 1, and it's because it's, I think, hard to find also mature ESFPs. There is a tendency to live in the moment, which I think takes away from their potential of what they can become. Because I do see the potential though. Yay, we have gone through all the types. Comment below what do you think about this.